I see. Tyrael wrote this book for the new Horadrim and future generations. Is this a new group Tyrael put together, or are these the same Horadrim from Nate Kenyon's Diablo III: The Order? Who are they? We saw them in the Reaper of Souls cinematics, for example.
Yeah, so it's the same group, and also something else. Like you're gonna see more of this new Herodrum in other places as well. Nate Kenyon's follow-up to the Order is called Storm of Light. So you're going to see some more of the members of the new Herodrum in Storm of Light, and they're touched on in this book. And if you read Storm of Light, that's going to answer some questions about the Herodrum in general that people are going to have. And I just want to say, for the Order, story development for the Order was done by James Waugh. And the reason I'm saying that is because I did an interview a few minutes ago, and I completely neglected to mention James Waugh as the story developer for that book. So I'm trying to make amends for that now.
Montoya?
Hear that, James Waugh?
James, that was for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The timeline, it is nice. It is really nice. And
oh, cool.
I got the ultimate visual guide for Warcraft recently, and I have a timeline as well. What's it like putting these together? Diablo obviously having it's a little. It seems like it would be a little more manageable, but I'm just curious, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a process. Like, we had a lot of meetings about the timeline, just because, like, with all the previous published lore, all the previous books, you know, they reference events. Sometimes they reference years or what certain characters are doing, and then we look at the games, and they're referencing stuff too. So it's really like laying out all that information like a puzzle, you know, and then trying to see, okay, how can this fit together? How, you know, we had to make little tweaks here and there for it to fit together well, but yeah, it was fun, but it was definitely a process that we met on numerous times.
And manuals too.
Oh, the manual,
right?
yeah.
And so something to keep in mind as well. We did not have historians in the very early stages when we were doing books and things like that. So I don't remember exactly at what point Evelyn Fredrickson, for instance, came on board and started, you know, serving as the main historian on a lot of this stuff. But there is content that existed before we had the historians really kind of keeping an eagle eye on everything and making sure that all the dates line up the way they're supposed to and nothing overlaps that isn't supposed to and all that kind of stuff. So that's something else to keep in mind. Like when you're going back and you look at some of these dates and things, you know, you run into stuff where it's like, well, okay, we didn't have a historian at that point, so we're going to have to figure out, you know, either you got to choose one over the other, or you got to come up with an explanation as to why something doesn't make sense, or whatever. So that's, I think it's just an interesting tidbit of information.
Okay.
It's nice to know that we have at least a point right now in this book of a timeline that we can use as a lore reference for the time being.
Yeah.
And now we have historians.
Yeah.
And Sean too. Shout out to Sean.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We know that the Nephilim are offspring of angels and demons. In this book, Tyrael says he gave up his angelic essence to become immortal. How did Tyrael become mortal, and does he have a demonic component now like a Nephilim?
Oh, that's interesting.
Good question. Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. Yeah, for him becoming mortal, I think Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. It's really his choice to shed that.
Yeah.
Mortality, right?
Yeah, definitely. It was his choice, and you know, the angels are powerful beings, right? So I think they're kind of capable, if they choose to do that, you know, they're capable of making that transformation.
In a sense, angels and demons come from the same essence, Anu.
Right.
Right.
I think maybe it can be played around that aspect that shedding away this angelic essence, he can have like both. I don't know, both essences in a sense.
I think it's an interesting concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, okay. A few days ago, a fan from Latin America told me how difficult it is to obtain Book of Tyrael. Shipping along is over $20. Are there plans to publish the book on Kindle or Comixology for other people outside the United States?
Hey guys, this is Lindsay. I can definitely help find that information out for you, and send that to you as soon as I have it.
Thanks. And I had a question about the Crusader section of the book. It was interesting to see the contrast between Crusaders and mainline, as mainline as it gets in the Diablo universe, Paladins. What was that like to develop something that actually seems pretty distinct, but using a similar faith? Well, actually the same faith.
Yeah, the development credit really goes to the game team for Crusaders.
Yeah.
And our liaison on the game team for pretty much all of this was Brian Kendrigan. So I can't speak to how much of the Crusader lore he created himself, but certainly the credit for the creation of the Crusader background and everything else goes to the game team, and then that was kind of handed over to us, and then we conveyed that, and Matt wrote about that in the book, and we're continuing to expand on that. We're gonna touch on that even more in the fiction, and it's certainly something that we're having a lot of fun with. It's a great, they have a great story hook.
Mm-hmm.
And all kinds of really, really cool concepts associated with them. So we're lucky to be able to communicate all of that.
Yeah.
It's really neat to see how it's kind of like it's a very small scale reformation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember too when Brian first met with us and kind of gave us the pitch for the Crusaders. I just thought it was really cool. I was really excited. It just seemed like a unique story, and just there was a lot of cool stuff in there to play around with in terms of telling future stories too.
I found in the book a lot of rich story about West March. What can you tell fans about the process of creating all these story about West March, which is tying in with the upcoming expansion?
That was another one where a big chunk of the West March lore had been written by the Diablo III writers, and sort of that was kind of handed off to us. And then I remember we met with Metzen too, and we kind of went over things and we dug out some more ideas. So, part of it was like, how can we make it a bit different from the other cultures we've seen in Sanctuary, like in Kyrgyzstan and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. And it kind of provided us an opportunity to really dig out who Rakkus was and why he was going over there and the kinds of challenges he faced. Like I'd kind of love to see a story someday about him fighting the monks in Ivgorod. I just think that would be kind of cool, like paladins versus monks. But yeah, it was. You're definitely going to see a lot of West March in Reaper of Souls. So the stuff in Book of Tyrael is a good primer for that.
There is another part in the book that compiles all the factions of Sanctuary. I think that for people who loves to read this kind of stuff, that's going to be very informative. How do you decide which factions to mention and which not? For example, I think that there were some that were not mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I may have mentioned this earlier, but for Book of Cain, we had a huge list of content, and unfortunately, due to space constraints, we just had to kind of pick and choose and cut some stuff out. So it was the same thing for Book of Tyrael. For the faction section and the character section in particular, we had a huge list of different factions and different characters we wanted to cover, and we ended up meeting a few times about that. And due to space constraints, we had to cut down a little bit. We had to decide which ones we wanted to focus on and which ones we wanted to save, maybe for later content or future stories. So the factions you see in there now are a result of those meetings. We tried to focus on the biggest factions, or the ones that maybe had the most visibility to the community. So like a lot of the classes from D2, their faction is kind of represented in there, or stuff from D3, like the Templar and the Iron Wolves, that's represented in there as well.
All right, well, thank you for your time, guys.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely, it's
Great.
always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Enjoy the book, enjoy your short stories, just really enjoying all the lore, and I appreciate your time.
No, it's great. I'm really glad you enjoy it.
There's lots more to come.
Yeah.